Alright, so if you've made it to this point, you're probably pretty stoked that you have Xcode up and running, and we have our first app ready to be worked on. But you'll notice there's a lot of different panels, a lot of different tabs, a lot of things to click on. So you may have started exploring some of these things yourself. If you did, kudos to you. If not, we'll walk you through each one here at some point. The first thing you need to learn though is the simulator. So what is the simulator? It's a way to test your app inside the computer. So this virtual device, if you will, allows you to see essentially a rough draft of how your app functions and works. Now you can always hook in your real device, your iPad, iPhone, whatever it may be, and test on that, which is always a good idea because essentially it's the real speed at what the app needs to function at the real speed as what it should be functioning at. So what do I mean by that? So let's just go ahead and launch this and we'll talk about this. We have our gangster app. It's our first app we're working on. If we hit this run button, you'll notice we can choose from a couple different variants here. We can choose from the iPad 6 simulator, the iPhone 6 simulator, and the iOS device. iOS device is how we test on our device, but we'll get to that later. For now, just hit the run button. Alright, and yours may take a minute to come up, and check for it bouncing in the dock down here because it's all tied to essentially the speed of your computer, and that's what I'm getting at, is that the iPhone inside of your computer right here, the simulator, is not going to, it's going to run dramatically, I would say faster in most cases, because your computer is faster than what an app would run on your phone. So it's always important to test your app on an actual device once you've got things to a really good stable point. For the time being, the rough draft version works just fine and is really effective. So just remember that and keep that in mind as you go along developing. So as we launch this app, you'll be like, oh my god, I just got a gray screen. This thing does absolutely nothing. Well, once we get into Interface Builder, you'll see that that is the first screen that is created before you start making it look pretty and do things. Now, this works just like it would on an iPhone if you're used to using one. You hit the home button, and you'll notice that you have different, you can swipe through and you'll see you have your maps, your settings, pretty much all your standard iPhone stuff. I'm not going to say all, but most. Now, you'll have some apps. If you've been working on more than one app, you'll see those outlined here. Let's say I was working on a map app or whatnot. No problem. It just shows up right here. There's no icon, right? We'll set the icon later. But what we're working on right now is the Gangsta app. Now, when we click on it, again, this is the first view we see. It's gray. It's boring. That's fine. Now, we can do many different things inside of the simulator. We have access to a lot of different features and some that we don't have access to. Some of the features that we do have access to is screen rotation, right? So let's talk about how we'd rotate things. We could come up here and hit rotate left, which is essentially Apple or Command, whichever direction you want to go right or left. We also have shake gestures as well. You can tell what type of device you want to run it on and test as your hardware, either iPad, iPad Retina, the different styles of iPhone. You get the point. You can also tell what version, and you can have multiple versions installed. If you were right now, this is just for iOS 6.0. If we're still developing for backwards compatibility of 5 and 4, whatever it may be, you can you could switch that up here and develop across for whatever you want it to develop for. Now, some of the other things that you can do, you can tap things. So obviously entering the app is considered a tap. That kind of rhymed, but that's what it is. You can tap and hold. So if I wanted to delete this app, right, and run it again, all I would have to do is tap and hold. I get the little wigglies that most people are used to seeing on their phone when they want to delete something, and I would just hit X. It asks me if I really want to delete it. You can go ahead and try that out. I don't really want to delete it. Alright, so I'm going to stop that. Now if I came in here, oops, I did it again. Now, if I came inside here, there's a couple other things I can do, right? I can double tap, I can swipe, right? We've seen swipe just earlier. There's swipe for you. We can also rotate, and we can drag and pinch. Now, if I hold down the Option key, I'll get these two little ball looking things which essentially emulate fingers, if you will, and I'd be able to rotate, drag, or essentially pinch. Now we can see a better working example of that as I found a pet website online. Obviously this isn't mobile optimized, so I could come in here, hold down the Option key, right? That's all I'm doing, hitting the Option key, and we could zoom in, right? We could, if there was rotation to it, we could rotate. Obviously there's not rotation to this web, but if it was a map or something, we could definitely do that. Now I could zoom in, click around, just with mouse clicks, scroll up and down, just like you would on a normal device. So let's just go ahead and zoom out. There we go. So essentially you get the point of what it can do. Now let's talk about what it can't do. Right, you have a couple different, you can't make phone calls obviously because you can't stick your hand in the computer and pick this phone up and dial a number. Right, you could dial a number if you really wanted to, but it's not gonna, obviously you can't do that. So accessing the accelerometer, right, some games and whatnot access the accelerometer for directions, and you know, there's tons of example apps like that out there, but you can't access the accelerometer because you physically don't have a device. Same thing with camera. There is no camera inside of this, right? It's not like it launches the webcam and takes a picture. That doesn't exist. No camera access in the simulator. There's also no microphone access, no OpenGL features, and you can't install applications from the App Store, and you can't send SMS messages. You're probably thinking to yourself, like, dang, I can't do much, can I? Well, for the most part you can do a lot, and that will get you very, very far, but as you go along it will be best to test on your actual device. So in the next tutorials we'll go ahead and start walking through other scenarios on testing devices, and we'll start walking through more of the interface and actually start building an app now that you see how the actual simulator works.